question for the two of you, but first I have to ask Mike, do you hate the Red Sox?
No, not at all. Boston's just never been messed up in a big screen movie before, so I thought it was time. Can't do San Francisco and New York again. Boring, you know.
Real question for the two of you. I would imagine making this film was an amazing experience. Could each of you share like a day or two that you'll always remember from making the film?
Ooh, that's a good one. So many days have gone by. It's hard to pick. It's been over a 3-year adventure for me personally. I can tell you about a prank I pulled.
Love it.
Pranks are healthy because they keep everybody on their toes, and you know, making a movie can be very, very stressful. And so there was one night we were shooting particularly late, and I think everybody had it, especially with me. It was the full cast. It was the scene where Vera is calling into the jet and then explaining why she did what she did. And it's a very long scene and very emotional. And it was a lot of Ken and the other actors, you know, staring at her on this monitor. We're doing take after take.
So tired.
I know, I'm sorry. And we thought we had it, and I said, no, I need one more. And so rolled cameras, and they're going through it, and then just at a key moment in the scene, instead of playing the footage of the devastation that Vera had was trying to explain, we queued up a very key scene from one of Ken's classic movies, which
Memo's Vacation. And last scene and love scene with Chancy.
So it was the key moment in Memoirs of a Geisha when Ken and Z lock lips. And that had a nice stress relieving.
And everyone there cheering.
That was a good one. But there were just there was a whole slew of pranks. I used to put severed limbs and rubber snakes in the water coolers for the crew. I left a life-size Reagan McNeil from The Exorcist in Millie's trailer, who then proceeded to put it in Vera's trailer. So it was just a good way to keep the stress levels down.
Hey guys, Paul Shari from Juggalo.com. This question's more towards you, Mike. There's a lot of monsters in this movie. What led into the choices to go with the ones that you guys went with? I'm very curious how you chose who you were going to focus on throughout the film.
Oh, you mean like Mothra, Rodan?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean they're I keep saying it, but they're the crown jewels of the Toho universe. You know, they're the ones that I feel like most Godzilla fans and even non-Godzilla fans are the most familiar with. So as much as I love King Caesar and Gigan and those guys, they're a little bit more obscure. But they're also the first ones who kind of teamed up. You know, there's a key point in Godzilla history when Mothra, Rodan, and Godzilla put aside their differences and decided to team up against King Ghidorah. It's an amazing scene, by the way. I strongly suggest you go back and watch that movie. But there's literally a scene where larval Mothra goes to Rodan and Godzilla and says, "Hey, this new asshole just showed up and he's gonna mess everything up if we don't stop him." And the two twin fairies are translating for the monsters so the humans can understand what the monsters are talking about. Like they're actually having dialogue with each other. And Rodan and Godzilla are like, the humans. They bully us. Like, why should we help them? And suddenly, it was, for the first time as a kid, that was where you suddenly saw things from the monster's point of view, where the monsters saw us as the monster. The monsters saw us as the bullies that were trying to prevent them from having happy lives. But anyway, it was just like you sensed that they were sort of the first giant monster team up. And I feel like they're truly the most iconic of the Toho universe. So it made sense that they should be the first ones to get readapted to the big screen for Hollywood.
Excuse me, Michael. They are not monsters.
They're characters. Yeah, I used the M word.
Hey, I'm Josh from Singapore.
Hi.
The grief of a mother can awaken the great monsters of the world, right?
Yes.
My question is on the pacing of the film. I thought it was exhilarating. How did you find, like a Board of Fadas, how did you find the sweet spot for the tension building, the action, the horror, the spectacle, and also social commentary?
It's hard. I mean, the movie really is created in the editing room, and there's a lot of material that ended up on the cutting room floor. There's a cut that I like to call Godzilla the miniseries, because it was basically 3 hours. So there were much longer versions of the scenes that you saw, and as much as I would love to just bathe in the Godzilla universe for 3 hours, it dragged. So we had to find that right sweet spot, as you put it, and it took a very, very long time.
Hi, oh, this is on. Hi, I'm Daniela from Australia, from news.com.au. I've got 2 questions, if that's okay. First of all, I found it really interesting that there were women. Like, you know, normally in a movie when there's military, it's an old white guy. So I'm really interested in what was your thinking, having kind of such cool, kick-ass women and women of colour in those sorts of roles?
I mean, honestly, if you go back and look at the history of Godzilla films, women who kick ass have been a strong part of it from the very, very beginning. I mean, even go back to the original, but I mean, the Mothra fairies in the old movies are very key characters, and as a kid that made an impression. But I love those kinds of characters. I mean, Ripley and Sarah Connor, I mean, they're icons as far as I'm concerned. So I'm glad the rest of the world is catching up, but I feel like there's just a long history of kick-ass women in sci-fi, and horror especially. So yeah, I just feel like the rest of the world is just now starting to kind of catch on to the idea that that's an okay thing to have in mainstream movies.
Just one more quick one. What did you want or do you want the audience to take something away from this about our relationship with the natural world right now? Were you trying to instill that sort of takeaway or not?
No, again, that's been a message of the Godzilla films from the very beginning in 1954. And I think that the message is really whatever you want to make of it, but it's there. I don't think it's that confusing. It's don't f up the planet. Otherwise, Mother Nature releases her 800 megaton monsters. For me personally, this film really is about finding a symbiotic relationship between man and Godzilla / nature. Like, to me, Godzilla always has been Mother Nature's protector. He's been, you know, like I said, Mother Nature's 800 megaton gorilla. And he's here to protect the planet against any monster, whether they be 400 feet tall or human beings. So, yeah, it's there. It's always been there. If you make a Godzilla film without that message, it's not a Godzilla film. It's just a giant monster movie.
Why in the U.S. in the U.S. Godzilla, the interaction with the human level and the kaiju level is so high?
I don't know. I don't know if that's completely true. I mean, I feel like, I hate to keep saying it, but if you go back and look at the long history of Godzilla films, they interact with him a lot. And maybe personally, I was more affected by those moments. Because I think that's what the message of all the movies are trying to say is, it is about that interaction. It is about that relationship. That there is a possible connection to be made between giant monsters and human beings. That no living organism lives on its own. It's all about that delicate relationship between different species.
Okay, and what's your favorite Godzilla beside yours?
The original, yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, David Crow with Den of Geek, and I was curious to kind of continue on the last several questions. The process of deciding how much to modernize or Americanize the mythology a little bit, like you've mentioned the fairies, and it's alluded to in this, but...
Is it? Who caught that? Raise your hand if you caught the twin fairies. Interesting.
Well, I related to that, so how much do you debate how much to leave in of that? Same with King Ghidorah hinted at being an alien in this?
You know, it's a process. I feel like because you're making a film that has such a deep fan base, you have to have enough of those kinds of hints and nods to keep fans happy, but you can't focus on it too much that distracts for the general audience either. So I love Easter eggs. I like to reward people for paying attention. Some of my personal favorite films are the ones where I notice things that I never noticed before. You know, a lot of the classics, details that the director snuck in there that only reveal themselves sometimes on home video. You know, like to this day, I still notice things in Alien or Blade Runner that I haven't noticed in the decades that I've been watching them on repeat. So I just think it's fun. It's fun.
Hi, I'm Jeff with Cinema Blend. So this cast is ridiculous, just super amazing, like newcomers to the franchise, not even the main three, but like, you know, Bradley Whitford, O'Shea Jackson Jr., you know, Charles Dance, the list goes on. Like, how did you establish such an impressive ensemble? And for Ken, is it refreshing to work with new faces, such talented people in the new installment?
You go first.
Yeah, and then I really enjoyed, and you know, Chansi is most friendly, my character, and the Sally Hawkins, I love her. And then it's Kyle, and any other cast is so powerful and then ownable. Yeah.
And yeah, it just came together. Everybody said yes. Just right down the list, everybody said yes. And what was fun for me was sort of preaching the word of Godzilla to the newcomers. Because there were a lot of people, Millie obviously, who weren't that familiar. I mean, I feel like everyone has heard of Godzilla, or they've caught one on cable, you know, in reruns and things like that. But it was fun to sit down and really kind of explain Godzilla to them. And for someone like Millie, we bonded over the fact that we both love animals and nature. And so I explained to her that, well, Godzilla's not just about giant rubber monsters beating the crap out of each other. There's actually this very wonderful message about the importance of nature and animals and our connection to them. So she really sparked to that. I think that's really why she signed up. And the other folks as well, like Bradley Whitford, like that message really resonated with him. So I think it was fun for them to be part of something so big and fun and entertaining, but also knowing that it had some social awareness underneath it. It's like a delicious dessert that's actually good for you.
Hi, I'm Jean-Baptiste, I'm from Paris, and I have a question for Ken. I would like to know what is your very first memory about Godzilla as a Japanese kid?
I didn't see the original, just before I was born. And then I love that Mothra. Yeah, and then two twins, songs and dancing, and yeah, it's very beautiful. And then, but I don't like the, Godzilla more than Gamera.
Oh,
you know, just
blasphemy in that Toho.
Secret to the Toho, yeah. And,
Gamera is not Toho, just so in case there's any confusion. Yeah.
Hi, Great Movie Phone. Mr. Watanabe, I was wondering, I was so transfixed by everything that you were doing the minute that you were hugging everyone goodbye and getting in the ship and then approaching Godzilla. Could you explain what you were actually seeing? Were you on a set? What was green screen? Because it all felt very real to me when I was looking at your face.
it's huge set. Just kidding. And then, yeah, it's just really complex answer, and I would like to say in Japanese, sounds like Godzilla. And then, あのシーンはとても複雑なシーンでした。っていうのは、その僕が持ってるポケットウォッチっていうのは父の形見で、彼が核を使って核で被爆した要因となったポケットウォッチなんですね。で、その核によって呼び覚まされたゴジラをもう一度その瀕死のゴジラを呼び覚ますために核を使うっていう、非常にこう自分の中での自己矛盾みたいなのも感じながら、でも 最終的には彼にしか望みを託せないっていうそういういろんなモメントを僕の中で感じながら、汗だくでやりました。
So that scene was a very complicated scene for me. I used my pocket watch, which has great significance because the pocket watch was something that was in the possession of Serizawa's father from the Japanese War when they dropped the nuclear bomb, and it's significant because Godzilla was born from nuclear, but now Serizawa is using nuclear to revive him, and it was a very complicated feeling for Serizawa, and to revive Godzilla using nuclear, and also keeping in mind that that Godzilla is needed to ultimately needed to restore balance and help humankind.
And by the way, while shooting that scene, the moment that Serizawa climbed the steps and reached the top and got to Godzilla, I saw something happen I've never seen in any other films I've directed, and I've never heard of it happening on set before. But he did the scene, and the entire crew broke into applause at the end, which was just surreal because obviously it's not heavy dialogue by any means, but I think they were captivated by his just expression and his performance, even though so much of it was unspoken.
In my memory, just it's in the world it's first touch to the Godzilla.
Yeah, I think there was one previous film where a person climbed onto Godzilla and tried to shoot him with a handgun. I don't know what they were thinking, but I think this is the first time in Godzilla's history where he's been touched affectionately, which is deep meaning for me personally. I mean, Serizawa's character is the one that I identify with the most. So having his character be the one that actually makes contact with Godzilla meant a lot to me to see that. It's like Adam touching the hand of God.
Hi, I'm Jerome from Canal+. Michael, I wanted to know, why was it so special for you to work on a Godzilla movie? And second, is Godzilla King of the Monsters paving the way to Godzilla Crossed Universe movie?
What kind of, I'm sorry?
The movie, like the Crossed Universe movie, like with the Godzilla and Kong on its way.
Oh, I see.
You know, started the kind of putting together Crossed Universe.
I mean, it meant a lot to me because I think I mentioned earlier in the introduction was that I grew up watching these movies. When I was a kid, 4 years old, 5 years old, I was a little half Asian kid growing up in Ohio, and I was made fun of a lot. And to watch these amazing movies about giant monsters, and I already had the love of dinosaurs and animals in nature, that were made by other Asian people, meant the world to me. Because other than that, it was cowboys and cops and robbers and just your typical TV shows and movies growing up. And Godzilla sort of provided this weird security blanket because he was so strong, he was so powerful. But besides the fact that it was entertaining and fun, I was keenly aware, even at that young age, that there was a message underneath all of it. And I heard that, and that meant a lot. In the same way that Star Wars is really a movie about spirituality, if you dissect it, Godzilla had this oddly subversive message to it. And so that resonated, and the fact that it was made by other Asian people just meant a lot. And so I wanted to continue that. My first attempt at making a film, I think I was around 10 years old, was I took my family's Betamax camcorder, yes, I'm that old, and set it up, and I took my pet tortoise, a box tortoise named Tony, and let her rampage through my Star Wars figures. And that was my first instinct, was to make a Godzilla movie. And then I tried to do it again in college, and I made a 2-minute Godzilla film. And so it's just always been in the back of my head that I wanted to do that. And I even remember when I was in college, they were shooting Roland Emmerich's movie in New York, and I was like a little bit jealous, and a little bit angry that I wasn't going to be able to do it. But here we are. So, as far as whether this film is setting up a larger universe, duh. I mean, we don't drop Kong's name for nothing. But I mean, honestly, Toho has been doing this since the 50s and 60s. You know, God bless Marvel for what they've done in sort of reviving and modernizing the concept of cinematic universes. They deserve all the accolades in the world for it. But you know, the first attempts at it were the Monsterverse, the monster universe that Universal was quietly attempting to build back in the 30s and 40s. But then Toho really took the ball and ran with it. And it's because they crossed over Mothra, Rodan, and Godzilla that concept really grew. And so I feel like the legendary Monsterverse working with Toho is really bringing it back home.
Hi, Ian DeBora. I'm with IMDb. I love that you said that about Godzilla, because growing up, Asian kid, loved film. Seven Samurai and Godzilla were highly impactful, like in my life. So I appreciate
Bruce
saying
Lee
that.
Too.
Yeah, Bruce Lee. I mean, it was so cool saying all that. But my question was, I'm a pretty big Godzilla fan, and I did a quick search of Atlantis Godzilla. Did you pull from Godzilla, the Colossus of Atlantis, an episode from 1978, or was that sort of a natural inspiration?
It wasn't a direct pull or inspiration, no. I've always loved Jules Verne style adventures. I feel like movies don't have enough of that anymore. And I personally love theories about lost civilizations. And growing up, I'll never forget the disappointment I felt when I found out that mankind and dinosaur did not live together. You know, that decades of like Ray Harryhausen movies lied to me. And this seemed like a natural fit. I mean, personally, I love the concept that there was a previous civilization that figured out how to live with the kaiju, that cracked that code and figured out how to form a symbiotic relationship for their own survival. And that some cataclysm broke that relationship. And so while human beings sort of went off and forgot about their connection to the monsters and chalked up the monsters to fairy tales and legends, Godzilla never forgot. You know, which is why he has some weird distant memory of these tiny little squeaky creatures, and maybe there is some sort of affection there, which is why Serizawa says, like, we would be his pets, because maybe that's how he views us.
Hi, I'm Michael Payton with Warner Channel Latin America. First, I think that maybe giant reptiles rampaging through Star Wars is an untapped production opportunity.
I agree with you.
Interesting.
Just so you know, I truly believe that if you add Godzilla to any movie, it becomes a better movie.
Absolutely.
Right? Think about it. Take any movie in the world, and 20 minutes in, Godzilla shows up.
Maybe.
I guarantee you it's more entertaining.
My question is for Ken and also for Michael. Talk to me about the opportunities and maybe some of the difficulties about making this a strong individual movie that stands on its own, but also being part of the larger, incredible history of Godzilla, and also the Monsterverse that we're talking about that's currently underway.
As an actor, just doesn't need a big or small. Just focus on the character and make it a character with a director and any other cast or something, and then not different. Yeah.
I mean, and as a filmmaker and a fan, it's challenging, but
You challenge.
I'm challenging. It's my job. But at the same time, like, there are entries. I mean, we're now part of a generation which has been subjected to decades of these franchise films. I'm sure many of you are fans of Star Trek and Star Wars and Alien and all of that, or Nightmare on Elm Street, you name it. So there's a long history of franchise films, many of which have very strong chapters and weaker chapters. And as a fan of those kinds of films, I like to focus on the stronger chapters and, like, what is it that makes them great? Why do they stand out? And typically what I find are the ones that do stand out are the ones that sort of that they stand out on their own. You can enjoy them whether you're a fan of that particular franchise or not. I'll never forget seeing Aliens for the first time, and my aunt, who had never seen the first movie, walked out and she was still blown away by it. Star Trek 2, very similar. So it's a tricky balancing act, similar to the previous questions, where you have to be able to provide enough entertainment for the traditional fan base that loves it, but also you have to be welcoming enough to new audience members that they'll also understand it and enjoy it. And hopefully you're communicating the deep love that you have to that general audience.
I need to say one more thing, and then I have to fight to so many Godzilla fans, yeah, and it's so tough,
What do you mean fight?
No, I mean about so many knowledge and the history, and oh yeah.
Hi, Michael. I'm Daniel from Rocket Beans, Germany, and I have a question for you. And if you do, or if you could direct another Godzilla movie, which kaiju should be definitely in it? Which is the favorite one you couldn't direct yet now?
So like which monster from the Toho pantheon? Yes. There's one creature that I find fascinating because she's a plant. Her name's Biolante. And she's also one of the very few other female kaiju. But she's interesting because she's almost like this Frankenstein creature. She's a combination of DNA from a scientist's dead daughter, Godzilla, and a rose. And it's like Audrey on steroids. But there's something just so interesting because I find that she's also very misunderstood. But she also gave Godzilla a run for his money.
I love you.
Okay, this will be our last question.
Hello, hi, my name is Brandon from Malaysia. Just two quick questions. Number one, Toho Studios has such a rich history with Godzilla and all the abundance of creatures and monsters. And for Michael, for you to come in, were there any creative differences in when you guys were planning the story? And were there, disagreements, and how do you guys overcome these creative differences with Toho Studios? And for Ken, I asked this question to Michael earlier. What do you think is Godzilla's favorite sashimi?
Maybe tuna.
Tuna? Personally, I don't think Godzilla eats fish. I think they made that mistake before. As far as creative conflicts or differences, there weren't really many at all. We were really in sync with each other. I mean, the most intimidating moment for me personally was coming here to Tokyo, and Toho had final approval on all the designs for the creatures. And so I had spent a few months coming up with the designs with my creature guys and presented it to them. And I love the Toho guys, right? But when you walk, it's a little intimidating because everyone's wearing a suit, and it's the long conference room table, and I'd showed them everything, and thankfully they signed off on it.